Well, hello there, Tavarishi. It's been a while, but I guess I'm back. So let's get right into the topic, and what a spicy topic it truly is. Think back to when you were a child, let's say at the age of 8. What was a brand to you? Did you understand or know what Armani was, or Prada, or the Yebeni Gap? Did you see the difference between one model of a phone versus another? Did you distinguish between the attire your more privileged friends wore versus the piece of cloth on those less fortunate? Was Marco or Ivana or Jackie from kindergarten a Yeezys enthusiast, or was Tom the kid with the coolest branded bicycle? Or were they all together just your friends, play buddies, fellow little humans? Most of you watching, including me, knew very little of the social implication brands carried until early teenagehood, when we replaced our instinct to bond with our instinct to compete. Until then, our own identity was tied to our family, what sort of food we liked, and our favorite cartoons and video games. This all changed, and we were slowly dragged into the eternally spiraling hole of consumerism. Advertising taught us that what we thought we were wasn't enough, and that we had less than others, that we were less than others. That's when we slowly started to shift, to identify with items, brands, and the unattainable material. In order to belong, we not only had to think the way a said group would, but we would have to dress the same way, talk the same way, listen to the same music, and of course, associate only with those we deemed of our own social or economic standing. The years we had before early adulthood were a safer, truer, more enlightened way of living. But this beautiful, childish innocence lacked one thing that the consumer market cannot allow. It lacked profitability. You see, capital keeps itself afloat through continuous consumption. But not only must it stay on course, fueling its flames higher and higher, but it must also grow, expand, and take with it everything one might call pure and convert into cold, hard cash. After commercializing basic utilities, we moved to medicine, to mental health. We started monetizing on our own worldviews and even our self destructive behavior. So, what's left for this ever expanding market? Well, an auditorium Mr. Jake Paul, knowingly or not, intentionally or not, is introducing to the world of materialism. I'm talking about children, a resource not fully tapped into by the ever growing thirst for more. Don't get me wrong. Parents have been overspending money on their kids for the sake of conformity for decades now. I'm not talking about that, okay? I'm talking about children. I repeat, children being a new, perfectly legit target market which buys its own products. A whole buyer persona by itself. A market so easily manipulated, it'd be like taking money, candy, from a baby. Chances are you've had enough Jake Paul and Logan Paul reaction videos thrown at you that you learn more than enough about the fact that direct advertising to children is completely illegal in most of the world. But what this special pair managed to uncover is the magic of linking digital content targeted to children with the children as the direct potential buyer, either them or their parents, once they give up on arguing with their brainwashed Jake Pauler child. Even though the video title has Jake Paul in it, he's not the main premise of the video, actually not at all. It's what he metaphorically and economically represents that is probably of interest to you, oh you supreme, benevolent, intelligent viewer. You see, Jake is the embodiment of free market economics reacting to a shortage of expanding consumer markets. Jake is only there to fill an obvious gap in the sphere of targeting overpriced pieces of fabric and other services to people. The Poles, no, not the comrade Polish, the Poles, the fucking Poles, whatever. The Poles are like one of the last drops of vodka to fill an already plentifully filled bottle of vodka. The rest of the fluid all found its place, you understand? And for any non-privileged vodka to enter the bottle, it's impossible, except if you find the darkest, meanest corners of the bottle. In this case, the corner the Jake Paulers have dug themselves into are children, and the bad boy drops are the brothers themselves. The premise of unregulated market-based economics espouses the idea that by letting markets be as free as possible, only the ethically legitimate would prosper. It implies that doing business that hurts more than it helps is unsustainable, and that in the long run, only ethical business models can survive. Well, not only is this problematic due to the subjective communal nature of ethics, but it's also unattainable as a result because consumption by itself can rarely self-regulate on the premise of morality. What Jake Paul's targeting of children as a main source of income shows, among thousands of other examples, is that an unregulated market constantly creates incentives not for more ethical behavior, but instead more ruthless business mechanisms. The market gets so overcrowded at one point that it motivates you to think outside of the box. Sure, has thinking outside of the box ended up giving us a ton of yebeno good shit? Sure. But has it inspired maneuvers that instead of competing went out and found devious ways of achieving competitive value? Hell, yebeno, yes. With Jake Paul as an example, we see not the bettering of a product in order for it to become more competitive, but instead a deceitful business model which takes itself out of the mold of competitive business and creates a market of its own. The direct consequence of capitalist mentality and world building is not that of continuous growth, but self-sabotage and degradation of basic ethical principles. By going for the survival of the fittest market idea, free market economists, if you can call them economists, looked at it as a battle of lions, with the fittest, biggest, and most importantly, smartest ones winning. But what they completely forgot about, or chose to extract from, is all the snakes, vultures, spiders, that play the game completely differently. It's unfair to compare these smaller animals and insects to Jake Paul because those same animals don't have rational thought or a moral compass which can absolutely excuse them for their approach to survival, while Jakey here, it cannot. He is simply a byproduct of a system set up to define personal and communal success through material gain. I cannot say if he intentionally built up his career to this point or he just stumbled up into something that generates a metric shit ton of money and chose to proceed with it. In both cases, this Americanats is the epitome of the modern, uncensored entrepreneur. Not one which generates wealth through ingenuity, but through the bypassing of the flawed, weak, and decrepit rules that govern this system. This is where we get to the saddest part of the whole thing. One single individual, a biological creature, in this case Jake Paul, converts into a literal product dispenser, into a storefront, into a mega mic for promotional purposes. It is when the individual starts to identify almost fully with a brand that we have entered a new era of being, my friends. It is materialism manifest, a moment in which we are no longer represented by our relations to other people or self-reflection and self-perception. It's no longer defined by our worldviews or even by the way we invest our labor. It is instead melted together with a brand which equally represents us as much as we represent it. We become a brand for constant consumption. And as a consumable, we not only require but demand continuous interaction, constant improvement or degeneration. When we are in such a cage, we must strive for more by any means necessary, as our identity is directly linked to a brand and a set of products. I find it hilarious how some people at the same time seem to lack an understanding of trans people and yet see nothing quote unquote degenerate in a person adapting their own self identity to the service of a brand. It's so dystopian that we have stopped seeing it. Content creators of all sorts are being transformed into yebene vending machines. It is when our purpose begins to lay solely in the concept of generating wealth that we lose our humanity. I hope you enjoyed the video, comrades. Please like, subscribe if you did. It does help me out a lot. I promise that I will be posting more regularly, as now I have stabilized my job situation, which was a problem in the previous 2 months. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.